What if I told you some spirits never left their graves, and tonight they might be watching you? If you love ghost stories, hit subscribe, tap like, and share this video so we can bring you even more terrifying tales. Subscribe, like, share to keep the ghosts coming.
The first sound was not thunder, it was the whistle, long, deep, trembling through the dark like the breath of something ancient waking from a dream. The villagers of Begusarai, half asleep in their huts, turned their heads toward the tracks. In India, the sound of a train at night is as familiar as heartbeat, but that night, it came wrapped in a kind of silence that made even dogs stop barking. Train 502, Gonda to Delhi, a second-class passenger train with no prestige, no history, no reason to be remembered. And yet, that ordinary machine of steel and soot would become a myth, one of India's most enduring mysteries, a wound that never healed. The rain that night was relentless. Monsoon thunder drummed over the plains like gods striking the earth. Lightning flashed in crooked veins across the clouds, illuminating rice fields that shimmered like broken mirrors. And through that mirror, Train 502 ran a serpent of iron, glowing faintly with fire from its furnace heart. Inside the carriages, the world was smaller. Wooden benches, the smell of kerosene, wet clothes, the sharp sweetness of chai spilling from paper cups. A mother rocked a child. A young soldier dozed with his rifle between his knees. Lovers whispered behind the curtain of noise. The rhythm of wheels became a lullaby. And then something changed. Asterisk between Kagaria and Begusarai. The track runs through marshland. Old railmen say that stretch of line breathes. The ground shifts, and on nights of heavy rain, it exhales fog like a sleeping animal. Signalmen always hated that section. At 11:42 p.m., the signal tower at Kagaria logged, Train 500 to departed, all clear. 7 minutes later, Begusarai waited, and nothing arrived. The telegraph lines hissed with static. The signal lights flickered once, twice, then went dark. The thunder rolled, and when it passed, there was nothing. When morning came, railway patrol searched every inch of the track. Not a single rail was displaced. No sign of derailment, no wreckage, no broken sleepers, no scorch marks. It was as if the train had been lifted from the world, erased cleanly, without violence, without trace. The Indian Railways filed it as an unexplained disappearance during monsoon flood. But in the villages, people whispered something else. The train entered the other side. In the tea stalls near the tracks, men argued in low voices. A farmer swore he saw the train's lights cutting across the fields, but not on the track. It was floating, he said, like the rails had risen with it. A priest from a nearby temple claimed he heard chanting in the wind, not human chanting, but a deep metallic vibration that carried across the paddy fields, like an echo of machinery praying to itself. And then there was the story of old Babu, the signal operator who lived alone near the switchyard. He said that at 11:47 p.m., the telegraph machine started tapping on its own. Short bursts, irregular but rhythmic. He translated them out of curiosity, though Morse code had long fallen out of use. The message read, 502 entering mirror line. All passengers accounted. When asked later, he said he didn't remember writing it down. The note appeared in his logbook in someone else's handwriting. Within a week, Babu resigned. 2 months later, he was found dead near the tracks, his body unmarked, eyes open, staring at something that wasn't there. The Ganga River, swollen by rain, cut through the landscape like a dark artery. Boatsmen there began telling strange tales of a ghost light gliding above the water on moonless nights. One said he saw a full train reflected in the river, passing beneath the surface as if the rails had sunk into the current. When the government dispatched divers to search for wreckage, they found only silt and silence. But one diver refused to go down a second time. He claimed that under the water, he heard music, a low rhythmic hum, like the chugging of distant wheels. And when he turned his flashlight, he saw faces drifting past him, eyes open, mouths moving soundlessly, vanishing when the light touched them. He quit the next day. He never spoke again. In the archives of Indian Railways, a page from conductor Subhash Patel's report book still exists. The writing stops mid-sentence. Approaching Begusarai, strange static in the radio, passengers uneasy, lights flicker in, the rest is a blur of ink. Beneath it, a long black line runs down the page, as if the pen was dragged while the train jolted or trembled. Some say that line is not ink at all, but burn mark lightning's signature. 2 weeks later, Patel's family received a package. Inside his pocket watch, frozen at 11:47, and a railway cap damped with salt water. Though the train had vanished nowhere near the sea, 12 days after the disappearance, a shepherd named Haroon came running into town. Eyes wide, body shaking, he said he saw the train at dawn not moving, just standing in the mist near the old river bend where no tracks remained. It was glowing, he said, blue, like the inside of lightning. When villagers followed him, they found only scorched grass in the shape of parallel lines. The air smelled of iron and rain. That night, Haroon hanged himself from a banyan tree near the station. Pinned to his shirt was a torn ticket stub, marked 502. In 1973. Retired investigator R.K. Mukherjee reopened the case unofficially. His cousin, a teacher, had been aboard the 502 for 6 months. Mukherjee lived beside the abandoned rails, interviewing survivors' families, collecting rumors. His notes, found decades later in a rusted trunk, are filled with drawings of strange symbols and maps, connecting the rail lines to sacred sites. He believed the 502 had not crashed, but crossed into what he called the shadow line. He wrote, "The train did not leave our world. It ran parallel, slightly displaced, like a reflection that forgot its mirror." One page shows a diagram, the normal track in black ink, a faint, translucent red line above it, labeled Antaralok, the in-between world from Hindu cosmology, where souls wander after death. In his final entry, dated May 1975, Mukherjee wrote, "They are still traveling. The wheels turn without sound. I have seen the smoke." He died that same month. His heart stopped while sitting on his veranda, staring toward the rails. Every monsoon, locals claim a blue phosphorescent glow appears along the stretch where 502 vanished. It's not electricity, not swamp gas, something colder. A group of students once camped there to film it. Their footage shows a faint shimmer moving along invisible rails, followed by the unmistakable rhythm of wheels. Then, the sound of a whistle, not loud, but mournful, almost human. Moments later, the camera cuts off. They returned home shaken, unable to explain what they'd heard. Voices, dozens of them, speaking in different languages, murmuring a single word again and again. Home, home, home. In time, the story of 502 became legend. Mothers warned children not to play near the tracks after dark. Truck drivers claimed headlights sometimes caught a glimpse of carriages flickering beside them, vanishing when they blinked. Folk singers composed songs. Through the storm she rides, with passengers of rain and smoke, seeking a station lost to time. The story spread beyond Bihar to Calcutta, to Delhi. Even across the border, the ghost train became part of India's haunted geography, a reminder that modernity could still bleed into myth. But for the families of the vanished, it was no story, it was a wound. They gathered each year at Begusarai station to light candles beside the rusted rails, whispering names that no longer existed in records. Sometimes, the candles flickered out all at once, though no wind blew. Sometimes, a faint vibration trembled through the ground, like distant wheels passing beneath the earth. There are moments when reality itself seems to remember. In the workshops of Patna, mechanics have reported hearing an invisible train moving past at midnight, tools shaking on the walls, oil rippling in tins. Old telegraph poles along the disused section sometimes pulse faintly, carrying signals that no one sends. When decoded, the static hum forms repeating patterns. 502, and then, as quickly as it begins, it stops. Engineers laugh it off, electromagnetic interference, atmospheric anomaly. But one, an atheist named Rajesh Thakur, recorded the sound one night and slowed it down. Under the static, a voice emerged, not mechanical, human, a whisper, "We are still on time." In 1999, during restoration work on an old signal tower, a worker found a rusted pocket watch wedged between two wooden planks, the name engraved on it, Subhash Patel. When wound, the watch began ticking and stopped at 11:47 once again. But this time, the second hand moved backward. They sent it to Delhi for analysis. In the sealed crate, it continued to tick for 3 days, though no mechanical reason could explain it. When the crate was opened, the watch was gone. Only a small pile of rust remained, shaped like the outline of a train. Sometimes late at night, the railway announcer in Begusarai swears he hears an old intercom switch on by itself. Static crackles, followed by a woman's voice, faint, echoing, as if from a far tunnel. "Next stop, Delhi Junction, then silence. The loudspeaker cuts off, the lights flicker, and outside, for a heartbeat, the station glows with a reflection of something vast and moving, a ghost of steel and steam passing through the dark, unseen by all but the night itself. The ghost train 502 became not merely a story, but a phenomenon, a whisper in India's collective memory, a reminder that the boundary between machine and spirit,
It began with the dreams. At first, only the families of the vanished reported them. Restless nights filled with the distant rumble of wheels, flashes of lightning, voices calling names from beyond the window. But as the years turned, more people dreamed the same dream, a train moving through fog, slow and luminous, filled with passengers who stared out through cracked glass, their faces pale and wet as though drowned. Those who dreamed it never forgot the sound, the rhythmic click, a pulse that continued after waking, echoing in their chests, a heartbeat not their own. In 1977, a psychologist named Dr. Samira Naidu from Delhi began collecting cases of what she termed train-linked shared dream phenomena. She interviewed over 60 individuals, all unrelated, from different states, who described the same imagery: the number 502 painted in rust, the smell of diesel, a conductor without eyes checking tickets that turned to ash. What disturbed her most was that some of her subjects were children born years after the big disappearance. One child, 7 years old, said, "They keep asking me where the next station is. I tell them it's gone. Then they start crying." When Dr. Naidu tried to trace the origin, she began to dream it too. She wrote in her diary, "I see the passengers. They do not speak, but their mouths move in rhythm with the wheels. It is like prayer or hunger." Her diary ends with, the next morning, she was found wandering near the tracks outside Delhi, barefoot, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She survived, but never spoke again. By the early 1980s, railway staff at Begusarai began whispering of a phantom platform, a shadow that appeared only during storms. They called it Platform Zero. Guards described how the rain sometimes blurred the edges of the real platforms, revealing another line beneath, slick and dark, where no train should run. One man, Rafiq, swore he saw figures standing there during a blackout, silhouettes waiting patiently, holding umbrellas though no rain fell on them. He raised his lantern and called out. The figures turned, faces pale and expressionless, each with eyes glowing faintly blue. Then the light flickered, and they were gone. Later, when Rafiq returned home, he found damp footprints leading across his floor. They stopped beside his bed, and there, perfectly imprinted on the sheet, was the shape of a railway ticket. The ink read 502. He left the job that week. In 1983, the government authorized a brief exorcism of the railway section. After multiple worker fatalities attributed to electrical accidents, the chosen priest, Swami Arvind, was no ordinary holy man. He had spent years studying the concept of the in-between state where wandering souls reside before rebirth. He arrived with bells, incense, and ancient Sanskrit hymns designed to anchor restless travelers. The ceremony began at dusk. Beside the overgrown tracks, locals watched from a distance, holding candles that trembled in the wet wind. Midway through the ritual, a sudden gust extinguished every flame. The Swami's voice faltered. From the darkness came a low vibration, not thunder, not wind, but the unmistakable hum of wheels turning slowly on rails. Those present claimed they saw the fog twist, forming the faint outline of carriages glowing from within. 1,000 whispers rose, overlapping, crying in unison, "We never arrived." Swami Arvind fell to his knees, clutching his chest. When he stood again, his hair had gone completely white. He spoke only once before leaving. "They are not gone. They are in transit. Pray they do not find a station." In 1992, a young woman named Asha Singh moved into an old railway quarters near the abandoned line. She was a teacher, skeptical of superstition. Her house stood 100 meters from where the 502 had last been seen. On her first night, she heard a faint whistle. It came not from outside, but from within the walls. Then, the vibration like footsteps moving under the floor. Over the next weeks, the sound grew stronger, accompanied by faint voices, conversations overlapping in multiple tongues, laughter, and the rhythmic clang of a ticket puncher. She began recording them, but every tape distorted into static. Only once did a clear phrase emerge, "Doors closing." Her neighbors reported seeing her standing at her window at night, staring into the fog. One evening, they noticed the house lights flicker and go out. When they entered, Asha was gone. All that remained was her journal, open on the desk. The final entry read, "I saw them tonight. They waved. I think they recognized me." Years later, railway security captured footage on a surveillance camera at Karbigia station, a deserted stop long removed from active schedules. At 3 a.m., a figure appeared on the platform, a man in an old uniform, holding a lantern. He walked slowly, inspecting the invisible air as if checking tickets. When the lights flickered, his reflection appeared in the glass, but not his body. The camera recorded the sequence for precisely 7 minutes, then malfunctioned. When repaired, the footage showed something new. The same man, but this time inside a train carriage, gliding past the platform. The number 500 glowed faintly on the side. Technicians verified no trains had passed that night. The man was identified from archives conductor Subhash Patel, dead since 1967. In 2003, satellite imaging over the region revealed something strange. A faint double-line indentation running parallel to the original railway, visible only during heavy storms. Experts called it an optical illusion, a quirk of moisture, but locals said it was the mirror track, the spectral path where 502 still ran. During monsoon, they swore, the real and the mirror sometimes brushed, two worlds scraping past each other like rusted gears. When that happened, lights flickered in homes, clocks reversed by a few seconds, and people heard distant announcements echoing through the rain. An old porter named Bowler claimed that once, during such a storm, he saw the platform shimmer and a train appeared dim, ancient, filled with unmoving passengers. At the door stood a conductor who raised his hand in salute. Bowler fainted. When he woke, his wrist bore a faint burn mark shaped like a rail. He never worked again. In 2006, a research team from the Indian Institute of Science attempted to measure electromagnetic anomalies along the vanished route. They set up sensors, drones, and recording devices. For 2 nights, nothing. On the third night, at 11:47 p.m., the instrument spiked violently. Temperature dropped by 10 degrees. A deep hum vibrated through the soil. One device recorded a burst of radio frequency data that, when converted into sound, produced the unmistakable rhythm of a moving train. Hidden within the static was a distorted voice, whispering, "Tickets, please." When the researchers played it back later, they found the phrase changed each time. Sometimes it said, "Tickets, please," sometimes, "Take us, please." The team's lead scientist, Dr. Vikas Rao, later confessed that he began seeing flashes of movement in reflective surfaces, not his own reflection, but faces pressed against glass, fogged by breath. He left the project, citing psychological interference. Among the more chilling legends is that of the railway child, a small boy seen wandering near the overgrown track during storms. Travelers describe him wearing a school uniform from the 1960s, carrying a rusted LUNCHBOX. When approached, he asks, "Has the train come yet?" Those who answer no claim, he smiles sadly and fades. Those who answer yes sometimes vanish themselves. In 2014, a truck driver recorded dashcam footage showing the boy crossing the road. The image distorts, but for one frame, his eyes glow blue. Behind him, for a split second, appears the silhouette of a train, suspended above the fields, its windows bright. The boy turns, lifts a hand as if signaling, and disappears. By now, 502 had transformed from incident to myth, and from myth into faith. People began leaving offerings beside the rusted rails, garlands, candles, small clay trains painted blue. They prayed not for safety, but for passage. In one village, a woman claimed her sick husband had been taken aboard the phantom train in his dream. When he woke, his fever was gone. He said a man in uniform had given him water from the other side. Word spread, and pilgrims began visiting the site, chanting prayers to the railway of souls. During one such vigil, witnesses recorded a strange phenomenon. The ground trembled faintly, harmonizing with their chanting. The rails, long removed, shimmered with faint light. For a brief moment, they said, they heard music, a haunting metallic rhythm, like a lullaby played on steel strings. Then the rain came, and the sound dissolved. In 2017, during a storm unlike any other, a freight train passing through Begusarai reported seeing another train running parallel, luminous and silent. The driver, Ramesh Tiwari, described it in his log: old model, passenger coaches, Number 502 visible in flashes. Passengers staring out, no engine sound. He tried to signal. The other train matched his speed exactly, then began to fade, not backward or forward, but upward, like mist rising. For a moment, he thought he saw himself in its windows, staring back, expressionless. Then it was gone. When he reached the next station, he found the cabin clock frozen at 11:47. A man named Suresh Komet, caretaker of the railway archives in Patna, became obsessed with the 502 files. He worked alone in a basement filled with old paper and dust. He began to notice something unsettling. Every time he pulled out the 502 folder, the lights dimmed, the air grew cold, and the papers themselves, though locked in sealed cabinets, aged faster than the others, turning brittle, edges darkened like they'd been burned. He started hearing whispers, a low murmur, as if hundreds of people were reciting names from a passenger list. One night, the guard found him sitting motionless, eyes fixed on a sheet of paper. When they approached, the words on it had changed. Where the manifest should have been, it now read, "Arrival confirmed." The ink was fresh, still wet by the 2020s. The story of Ghost Train 502 was known across the internet. Videos, podcasts, investigations, all tried to capture the phenomenon, but those who visited the site reported strange after effects, static in phones, nosebleeds, sudden déjà vu. During one monsoon, a crowd of thrill-seekers camped near the ruins of the Begusarai line. At midnight, rain began, but it smelled not of earth, but of burning coal. Then came the sound, distant at first, then growing louder, the metallic rhythm of wheels, the whistle rising like a scream trapped in metal. Lights flickered across the field, a full train emerging from mist, glowing blue. People screamed, some filming, others frozen. Inside the lit windows were faces, hundreds of them, all staring outward, eyes wide, mouths open, not screaming but singing. The train passed through the crowd without touching them. Cameras caught nothing but white light. In the morning, 12 tents were empty, their occupants never found. On the wet ground, investigators found 12 railway tickets. Each bore the number 502, printed in fading ink. There is a bridge near the old line, known now as the Bridge of Echoes. No one crosses it at night. Locals say that if you stop halfway, you can hear the train below, running through air, invisible but heavy, like a current. Those who linger too long report hearing their own name whispered from beneath the bridge. Some claim that if you answer, you'll see a hand, pale, dripping, reach up through the railing. In 2021, a journalist named Naina Deshmak set out to disprove the myth. She recorded audio overnight. The next morning, her recorder contained 7 hours of the same sound, repeated click-clack, click-clack. But near the end, a voice, her own, is heard whispering, "I see the lights now. They're beautiful." She was never found. Months later, a relic surfaced in an antique shop in Lucknow, a rusted metal plate engraved with 502 Delhi Express. The shop owner claimed a stranger had sold it for a few rupees, saying it fell from the sky during the storm. When displayed under fluorescent light, the plate emitted a faint vibration, like distant wheels moving underground. Customers reported dizziness, hearing whispers in languages they didn't know. After a week, the plate disappeared. Security footage showed the lights flickering, and for one frame, the reflection of a train in the shop window. The legend no longer belongs to one place. Reports emerged from across India, phantom trains sighted on unused lines, strange vibrations in stations long closed, whistles echoing through valleys. Each incident bears the same mark, the time 11:47. Psychics speak of a transit loop, a purgatorial cycle where 502 continues to move, collecting lost souls, those who vanish during storms, disappear in floods, or die without burial. They call it the caravan of the unfinished. They say the train's passengers are not just the dead, but also the forgotten, the memories that time abandoned. And somewhere in that endless procession, there's always an empty seat waiting. Late one night in 2023, a commuter train halting near Begusarai reported seeing a woman walking along the opposite track, carrying a lantern. The driver slowed, fearing an accident. Through the fog, her sorry billowed, soaked with rain. She looked up, her face pale, eyes hollow, and raised her hand. In her palm was a small pocket watch, glowing faintly blue. Then she turned and stepped into the fog. As the driver watched, a train of light appeared behind her, old, battered, number 502 faintly visible. When investigators reviewed the CCTV, they found the footage blank except for one detail: the timestamp looping repeatedly between 11:47 and 11:48, never progressing. Today, railway operators across India share a secret communication code. If a whistle sounds when no train is scheduled, they transmit a silent acknowledgement, one click of static. To show respect, they say ignoring it brings misfortune. In some control rooms, operators have received phantom messages, train codes appearing for non-existent routes. The most common reads TRN 502, followed by the word inbound. When that happens, all lights flicker and the air fills with the faint scent of rain. Then, silence. Sound engineers studying residual vibrations along abandoned tracks have recorded patterns resembling speech. When filtered, the voices seem to chant in rhythm. We were not meant to stop. Others swear the rails themselves hum at night, not random, but melodic, almost compassionate, as if mourning their lost passengers. One researcher wrote, "It is not a haunting, it is an echo of momentum, a grief that forgot to die." In 2024, a man from Patna began claiming he was conductor of the 502. His name was Rohit Das, a railway janitor with no known history of delusion. He began speaking in an archaic dialect, calling people passengers. During interviews, he would fall silent, stare at the ceiling, and whisper, "Tickets please, the journey must continue." When asked what train he referred to, he smiled faintly, "You're already aboard." He died of cardiac arrest during sleep. The medical report lists time of death as 11:47 p.m. and now, as the monsoons return each year, the plains hum again with that old electricity. Villagers speak of hearing two trains running at once, one visible, one invisible, their rhythms slightly out of sync, like two hearts struggling to beat together. Sometimes, just before lightning strikes, you can hear it, a whistle that sounds too old, too tired, echoing from the dark horizon. They say the ghost train 502 is drawing closer, not to one place, but to all places where memory still aches. Because haunting is not about death. It is about unfinished motion, about journeys that refuse to end, and somewhere beneath the storm, in the thin crack between thunder and silence, a voice still calls, "Boarding now, final call." There comes a point in every haunting when the ghost stops chasing and the living begin to follow. By the time monsoon returned, 50 years after 502 vanished, the boundary between myth and reality had thinned. Those who searched for answers no longer stood on the earth. They stood, unknowingly, on its reflection. The world had grown louder, faster, more indifferent, but the whisper of the missing train lingered, like an unanswered question that refused to fade. And then, in 2023, the first signal returned. It began as a routine frequency sweep. An amateur radio group from Kolkata was scanning for old Morse chatter along decommissioned bands. Among static, they caught a sequence too clean to be interference. ... Then silence. Then again they ran it through a translator. The message read, "Train 502 entering Delhi Yard. Please clear platform." The date embedded in the transmission header was July 13, 1954, the night of the disappearance. At first, the students laughed, assuming it a prank, but the pattern repeated, precisely at 11:47 p.m., every night for 7 days. On the 8th, it stopped, replaced by what sounded like distant rails clattering over unseen ground. One student fainted when he slowed down the recording and heard voices underneath, not distorted, but perfectly human. Passengers calling for tickets, laughter, a child crying, a conductor's voice shouting, "Hold on, we are crossing." A journalist named Ananya Das, known for her investigations into urban legends, heard the rumor and decided to follow it. She had covered haunted forts, cursed lakes, and ritual sites before, but this one was different. It pulled at her. She arrived in Begusarai during the peak of monsoon. The air itself seemed electric. Locals spoke to her in half whispers, as if the name 502 itself might summon something. That night, she stayed at the station master's quarters, an old colonial building overlooking the rails. Around midnight, she awoke to the faint vibration of wheels beneath the floorboards. The sound came not from outside, but from below. The walls trembled. A glass fell and rolled in a perfect circle before stopping at her feet. When she picked it up, she saw her reflection, and behind her reflection, the window glowed faintly blue. Through it, she saw them, a train, not of iron but of light, moving soundlessly across the field. Inside, silhouettes sat frozen, like statues caught between motion and stillness. She whispered to herself, "It's only a dream." But the next morning, she found her notebook on the table, and inside it, words she hadn't written. "We never left. You were standing on our bridge." The following week, Ananya discovered something strange about the geography of the vanished line. Old maps didn't match the new coordinates. The section between Khagaria and Begusarai showed a deviation, a subtle curve that shouldn't exist. Engineers called it an error of measurement, but when she plotted it carefully, the curve formed a perfect spiral. Its center, aligning with the Ganga river bend, the very spot where decades ago had seen the phantom train. She took a drone to the area at dusk. As it hovered above the river, the camera feed flickered for one frame. She saw rails beneath the water, shining faintly like threads of mercury. Then the feed cut, the drone dropped, vanishing into the current dot. When it was recovered the next day, its onboard memory showed 502 video frames. Every frame contained the same sound when slowed down, a deep hum repeating a single Sanskrit word, and terror, the in-between. From that moment, reports multiplied. Truck drivers claimed they saw an entire train running parallel to the highway, but only in rearview mirrors. Farmers heard whistles at dawn, and a priest in Patna received confessions from travelers who swore they'd ridden the 502. One man, trembling, said he'd boarded at Delhi by mistake. It was an old train, he said, but the air felt heavy, like everyone was holding their breath. He described passengers staring straight ahead, not moving, not blinking. The windows showed no reflection, only a tunnel of endless fog. When the conductor approached him, he asked, "Where are we going?" The conductor smiled faintly, "To wherever you still wait." When the man woke, he was standing beside the Ganga, clothes soaked, ticket stub in hand, stamped with the date 1954. The ticket is now kept in a private museum in Kolkata. No one knows how the ink remains fresh. Ananya's investigation took a darker turn. A retired railway technician, now blind, told her the 502 was they were testing a new kind of alignment system, rails tuned to Earth's magnetic grid. If something went wrong, the train could slip. He called it the mirror accident. The rails, he said, were calibrated to a frequency meant to stabilize vibration, but if the storm hit at the wrong moment, it could have inverted the field. The train didn't derail, it folded. "Folded?" she asked. He smiled faintly, like a prayer answered backward. From a government warehouse in Patna, Ananya obtained a copy of the 502's passenger manifest. 347 names, but one entry at the bottom puzzled her, written faintly in pencil. Name Ananya Das, seat 14B. The ink was decades old. She froze. Her breath came in shallow bursts. Outside, the whistle blew, faint but distinct. And when she looked up, the clock on the wall read 11:47. In desperation, she sought help from a tantric priest known as Swami Ajitranath, who had long studied intersections of technology and spirit. He told her that iron, especially moving iron, carries memory, that trains, being machines of rhythm and repetition, create patterns strong enough to pierce the veil. The 502 became a mantra, he said, each wheel a syllable, each track a verse. When it passed through the storm, it didn't die, it chanted itself into another reality. He warned her not to seek it again, but she did. On the 70th anniversary of the disappearance, she walked to the river bend at midnight. The monsoon roared, lightning bled across the horizon, the ground shivered. Then she heard it, not with her ears, but inside her chest. The chugging, the whistle, the rattle of 1,000 unseen wheels. Mist gathered, curling like smoke. From within it, a faint glow began to form the outline of a locomotive, its body translucent, its windows flickering with trapped stars. And then the sound of doors sliding open. A voice, gentle, mechanical, echoed across the rain. Next stop. Everyone. She felt herself move forward, her feet heavy, as if the earth pulled her. The mist wrapped around her, cool and wet, tasting of rust and memory. Inside the glow, figures sat motionless, their faces familiar, too familiar. Among them, she saw herself. Her hands trembled. Her reflection smiled back. The air split with a thunderclap, and for a moment, the world inverted, sky beneath, earth above, rails spinning like a compass. Ananya found herself standing in a station unlike any she had seen. The signs were written in languages she couldn't recognize. The clocks all pointed to 11:47. their hands moving backward. Passengers drifted through like shadows, murmuring prayers that sounded like machine noise. Every few seconds, the loudspeaker whispered, "Train 500 to now boarding 4 everywhere." A conductor passed her, face pale, eyes hollow, cap damp with salt water. He handed her a ticket, stamped, "Seat 14B." She boarded. The carriage hummed, alive but empty. Outside the window, the world flickered fields, cities, oceans, faces all blending into a single, trembling horizon. The whistle blew again. The sound was not of metal, but of memory. Then silence. When Ananya's recorder was later found near the riverbank, it contained one final entry, a whisper barely audible beneath the rain. "I have seen them, they never stopped. We are all passengers, waiting to cross." In the first hours before dawn, the world feels unmade. Rain clings to power lines like threads of static. The horizon is a bruise between night and light, and for a breathless moment, everything seems to pause, as if waiting for something to pass by that is no longer supposed to exist. That is the hour the whistle returns, long, hollow, distant, like thunder learning to mimic grief. After Ananya's disappearance, Begusarai station changed, not visibly, not in any way that engineers could record, yet the air itself thickened with memory. Travelers waiting for trains reported hearing announcements for services that were not on any schedule. Express 500 to 2 Delhi, now approaching platform 3. Sometimes, the lights flickered when the voice spoke. Sometimes, the rails trembled, though no train arrived. One night, a janitor cleaning the ticket booth found a stack of stubs, all printed with the same date, July 13th, 1954. He tried to burn them, but they wouldn't catch fire. When he threw them away, they reappeared in the drawer the next morning. He quit 2 days later, muttering that the station was starting to remember itself. The following year, a physicist from Delhi University named Dr. Nirav Bhattacharjee came to investigate it. He'd read Mukherjee's notes about the mirror line and wanted to prove that the phenomenon could be explained as a temporal fold. He set up vibration sensors along the abandoned track, recording microseismic data. At 11:47 p.m. every night, the instruments registered movement, a wave of pressure passing along the Earth, identical to that of a train in motion. But when mapped against real time, the data formed a perfect loop. Each night's pulse overlapped the previous one, as though the same event were repeating endlessly. Trapped in its own echo, Bhattacharjee's final report ended with a handwritten note: "The train is not gone. It's still moving, but within the moment of its vanishing, a single instant, replaying forever." Weeks later, he was found dead in his lab. The clock on his desk was frozen at 11:47. Decades of fear had turned to ritual. Each July, villagers left offerings beside the rails, garlands, oil lamps, cups of chai. They said the dead traveled best when remembered kindly. Some claimed to see faces reflected in the flames. Strangers at first, then lost relatives, then themselves. The older generation no longer told the story as tragedy, but as devotion. To them, the 502 was not cursed, it was sacred, a train of souls carrying prayers through the afterlife, keeping the bridge between worlds alive. But children still woke crying in the night, saying they heard wheels in the sky. In 2025, a freight engineer named Kiran Nair made a wager to walk the length of the disused line at midnight, alone. He carried a camera, a flashlight, and a small packet of salt for protection. The footage recovered from his body later tells the rest. At first, only wind and rain. Then, at 11:45, a faint blue shimmer appeared ahead, 2 parallel lines of light stretching into fog. He whispered, 502. The ground began to vibrate. When the whistle came, it was deafening. The air bent, the mist swirled, and suddenly the train emerged, transparent, luminescent, beautiful. He stood frozen as it slowed before him. Doors opened, one by one, like eyelids. A conductor stepped out, face pale, eyes blank, voice calm. "Tickets, please." Kiran laughed nervously, showing his empty hands. The conductor nodded. Everyone boards eventually. The footage ends with Kiran stepping inside. When search teams arrived 2 days later, all they found was his camera lying on the rail. The metal beneath it was warm. The new station master at Begusarai, Ravi Malhotra, began keeping a private log. His first entry: "Lights flickered again tonight." Announcer spoke unprompted, mentioned 502. "No such service exists." By his final entry, the handwriting trembled. The train comes whether we believe or not. I saw faces in the windows. They looked at me like I was the one missing. He never returned for his next shift. His desk drawer contained a single note. The living have schedules. The dead have timetables too. 2 months later, shortwave operators across India picked up an unexplained frequency, identical to the one from decades earlier. The signal was weak, buried in static, but when amplified, a clear voice emerged. Train 500 to arriving on platform. Please stand clear of the mirror line. Background sounds followed. Wheels, murmurs, a child's laughter, and finally a woman's voice whispering, "Seat 1 for B." Window view, Ananya's seat. By now, the legend of the ghost train 502 has grown beyond location, beyond history. It moves not just through India's heartland, but through conversation, through memory. It travels whenever someone speaks its name aloud. Every retelling becomes another station. Every listener, another passenger. Perhaps that is its curse. Perhaps that is its purpose. If the train folded through time, then each retelling unfolds it again, releasing fragments of that eternal instant. We are the echo it created to keep itself alive. One final fragment remains, a letter found inside a rusted signal box in 2031, unsigned, dated July 13, 1954. The paper is dry, the ink fresh. It reads, "We are still traveling. The lights outside have changed. Not stars, not cities, only faces, floating, watching. Sometimes we see your world, like a reflection passing by. Sometimes we see none." The conductor says the line is long, and the next station has no name. Tell them we are not afraid anymore. Tell them the whistle is not mourning, it is calling. There are mornings when fog hugs the earth, and the horizon glows the color of silver ash. If you listen closely, truly listen, you'll hear it. Faint, rhythmic, impossibly distant. A train, the ghost train, moving nowhere, yet passing through everything. Its passengers watch us from the other side, faces pressed to glass that divides memory from dream. Perhaps they envy us, perhaps they pity us for thinking we've ever truly arrived anywhere, because maybe we, too, are aboard something endless. Maybe we've been riding all along. Begusarai station is now mostly abandoned. Vines crawl up signal poles, dust covers benches, but every year, at 11:47, the lights surge bright, just once, and the air fills with a low, trembling hum. Locals say it's just the power lines. Old railmen know better. They look toward the horizon and whisper, "The 502 is passing." And when thunder rolls over the plains, it carries an echo of laughter, of prayer, of wheels turning forever. Somewhere, a child presses their face to a fogged window and asks, "Are we there yet?" And the conductor, kind and patient, answers as he always has. Almost the whistle blows, long, sorrowful, eternal, and in that sound, all journeys begin again.